So it's 8:02, and as I promised, I'm going to kick this off, this wonderful new webinar. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. We are around 150 people from all over the world, Europe, Asia, and America today gathered in this webinar. And for me, this must signal that we all share two common things. One, we know that our current leadership and management need to change, right? We cannot continue the way we're doing it. And two, we want to really understand the new animal, the new management model, the new leadership. So why? Why do you want to learn these things, and why are you here? I think we are here for different purposes. One is that you need to be here because you know that your company will not be competitive enough if we don't change. But a lot of you are also here because you're scientists or advisors, and you want to really take part of the latest. So I'm the director for the Rendanheyi Silicon Valley Center, and we want to provide the world with the latest in management for a digital or a 21st century. Today, we'll focus on a very exciting philosophy/model, Rendanheyi, that already has showed its value by having large positive business impact on firms that have adopted the model. And the structure of today will be, first out will be Professor Bill Fisher. He is from MIT and IMD, and he will tell us a little bit more why Rendanheyi and why hire. I think it's an important question to ask. Then two, Simone, Cicero, Emanuele, Quintarelli from our sister center in Italy, Rome, will give you the goodies about the what. What is the Rendanheyi model? Then after that, we will leave the floor to you. So you will be able to ask any question you have about this new model or / philosophy. And then we will end up by having me coming back, and I will give you a little bit tip on how you can learn more. I will also help you to moderate the questions and make sure that the questions are seen. And I would love you to publish the questions in the chat window, not in the Q&A. So we don't have two channels for questions. You can also find a link to a course on Rendanheyi that will be in October in the chat window, and I will resend this later. But for now, I think it's time to have Professor Bill Fisher up on stage. Welcome.
Thanks, Annika. Before I put my slides on, I just want to say how good it is to see so many familiar faces in the group. So it's nice to be here with you. We're going to try to do the impossible, which is essentially introduce two questions. What is Rendanheyi and why hire? And do it very quickly in 5 minutes. I'm going to start with the second question first because I think it's the easier one. We're going to use hire as an illustration of the Rendanheyi approach to transformation. We're going to do it because it defies all the traditional or current illustrations of transformation. It's large, it's complex, it's traditional hardware manufacturer in an old economy industry. It's about as far away from being a digital native as you can get. And yet it's trying to cope with changes taking place in the world around us. It's a story about remaining relevant in a changing world. And I think that's something that probably resonates with all of us. It's about an unusual organization and an unusual story. So I think hire is unique for 4 reasons. One is the scale of the transformation, 70,000 people and counting. So this is not a small startup in Silicon Valley with a bunch of kids running around in flip-flops. Forgive me, Annika. This is about real people making real things. And that should get our attention. It's also powered by a very simple set of 3 guiding principles, which have remained consistent over a 40-year period. it's also about exquisite details to achieve these principles. So the principles I think of as dreams, and the details as details, dreams and details. But one without the other doesn't really make it work. It's got to be the two. And as I mentioned earlier, it's 4 decades of experimentation. So it has not been a clear shot to the finish, but it's been trial and error all the way through. If I look at Rendaheyi, the way I think the best way to explain it or introduce it is it's the operating philosophy that's really informed Heyer's transformation. It's rooted in Peter Drucker's recognition that the purpose of a business is to create and keep a customer, not profitability, not return on investment, not shareholder value, but to create and keep a customer. And if you can do that, the others should fall into place. And so one of the ways to keep in mind when you're thinking about Rendaheyi and what you're going to hear over the next hour is that it starts out by trying to create this link between our people and the customers they're trying to serve. It's about providing a great customer experience right from the start. And that means our organization linking with that customer on a sustainable relationship. But it's also recognizing that the customer, if we do this, the customer can pull out the entrepreneurial energies of our organization. There's a fundamental belief that our people are smart, they're committed, and they can be entrepreneurs if only we create with them an organization that allows them to unleash their talent. And finally, at least as expressed by Higher Qingdao, it's about sharing the value for all those involved. So a fundamental belief that really actually gets interpreted differently no matter depending on where you are is that the value created should be shared between the organization, Higher, or whatever organization created it, the customer that's been involved from co-creation onward, and the people in the organization who actually make this happen. It's not just value capture, value creation and value capture, but it's value creation, value capture, and value distribution. And I think the last point that I'd like to make is that the essence of Rendaheyi is really part of the DNA of the organization. So when we interviewed General Electric Appliances and the executives there, one of the people we interviewed said, look, think of it as a fractal. You know, we look at we talk about entrepreneurial energies in the organization. You look at the organization as entrepreneurial. You look down one level and you see micro enterprises or small units and they're entrepreneurial. You look down yet another level and you see the individuals working in those micro enterprises and they're entrepreneurial. So this principle is woven through everything you see. And the same is true for the obsession with a great customer experience. And in Higher Qingdao's case, the sharing of the value among all those created. So I think we're in for a great webinar, but keep these things in mind. It'll help you cut through the details. Thank you very much for your patience with this.
Thank you.
I'm stopping sharing.
Yeah, thank you. And with that, we got hopefully the answer of why Rendanheyi and Higher, and now we are going to learn more about the what's. And we have Simone and Emanuele coming in on stage.
Thank you so much, Bill. Thank you so much, Annika. Let me share my screen. So,
hello, everybody.
We would like to bring you with us into this journey that, as Bill anticipated, is an amazing journey of exploration. And we believe at Boundaryless, this is really one of the most extreme stories about thinking, imagining the future of organizing. This is what we are really looking for and caring for. The story began in 1984, because at some point the department manager in Qingdao asked all of their colleagues to join the hall, gave them hammers and asked them to smash fridges. And just think about the cost of fridges back then. It was 2 years' salary It was really a symbolic move to help the organization rethink the relationship with the market, to rethink the relationship with quality, to rethink the relationship with the customer, under the belief that unless they were starting to care for the customers and care for quality, well, it would have been the enterprise to be shuttered. That was the beginning of a story that then became Hire, and that department manager became the CEO of Hire, Chairman Jean Grimin. There is a CEO, but also a philosopher. And after many years, the organization went through a unique transformation, 6 stages of transformation, both of the business model, both of the strategy, but also of the culture and the organizational design, from a very traditional organization organized as a hierarchy with command and control, through an increasingly inverted mechanism, giving power, pushing power and decision-making power to the edges, closing the distance with customers, and really rethinking the organization as an entrepreneurial ecosystem. In Boundaries, we really believe that what Hire is bringing is a great example of how to organize yourself in order to act as a platform, act as an aggregator on the system, on the market. And just think about companies such as Zappos, such as Uber, such as Airbnb, Facebook. Most of them are platforms. So we are not just talking about organization design, we're talking about how to organize your company to play a role that is strategic important into the market. All of this brought to the Rendaheyi. And we believe that the Rendaheyi, what Bill just described, is probably the best example in the world about implementing complexity ideas into a huge organization in apparently, a commoditized industry. So there is no excuse if you are a traditional organization. There is no excuse if you are in a commoditized industry. Now we have a great example about how to translate the complexity principles to absorb the uncertainty, the unpredictability, the volatility that we all see in the market. And COVID really, I think, convinced all of us this is real, this is happening, this is impacting and disrupting all of us. In a nutshell, what the Rendaheyi has tried and succeeded in doing is, first of all, as Bill was saying, putting the customer front and center. Everything is about the customer. Even salaries are really driven and connected to customer outcomes. The second point is taking inspiration, but really bringing principles from the market into the organization design. And this is quite unique, but this is very much needed, again, to play a new role in the market. And also to have a continuous adaptation. Most of our organizations are just too rigid, are too static, are not able to sense opportunities, to act on opportunities. Well, the Rendaheyi empowers every individual to reshape the organization around customer opportunities in an entrepreneurial way. Because unlocking the human potential, unlocking the entrepreneurship, making each colleague a CEO is really the goal. And it's really at the core of the words that Jean Grimin often shares with people listening to him. And finally, there is a belief under this, the belief in human ingenuity and human autonomy. The belief that human beings can manage themselves, that don't need managers, don't need supervisors, don't need people telling them what to do, because they can decide the direction, can decide who to work with, and also how to share profit and money between themselves. We believe this is not unique to Hire. This is really critical for survival at this moment in time in the market, in any part of the market, in any region, in any continent you are. How does this look like? There are only a few, but quite, interesting principles and artifacts. The first one is the micro enterprise. The firm is unbundled, is fragmented, is decomposed in small teams that have plenty of freedom and plenty of autonomy. The second point is about having a mechanism to reconnect, to rebundle the small teams into larger entities that are able to serve complex needs for customers. This is not done through hierarchy. This is not done through organizational structure. It's done through dynamic contracts. The third point is applying this unbundling that is meant to reduce the organizational bureaucracy, the organizational debt, also for support functions. Think about HR, think about finance, IT, legal. Well, there is often where a bit of slow responses, a lack of accountability may be hidden in the organization. IR has been applying those same concepts also here with this term of the shared service platforms, having teams that have responsibility in front of their internal customers to provide excellent services, because otherwise the micro enterprises can buy those services from outside. And the last point is industry platform. And again, this is quite a discontinuity with what most organizations do. And the discontinuity is about opening up strategy. Strategy is not just done in a small room by the big guys calling all the shots. It's done by investing in industry platforms, areas such as Internet of Food, very broad areas, putting money on the table, investments, and inviting small teams, micro enterprises, or groups of teams, ecosystem micro communities, to use that money to invent new products, to invent a new experience, to generate value for customers. All of these applies to employees, but it also applies to external companies. As boundaryless, we collaborate with IR. So we are a micro enterprise, even if we are not IR employees. So the same principles are applied everywhere, as Bill was saying, in a fractal way. So at the end, you can zoom in, you can find again the same structure, again the same dynamics. We believe, as I said, that this is true not only for IR. This is really a pattern that we can identify in many of the pioneer organizations for the last 40 years. And we believe there are three critical points that define this model that we call the entrepreneurial ecosystem enabling organization. The first point is being entrepreneurial, is enabling every individual, all of your colleagues, to be entrepreneurs. Whether it's really technically right or it's just a mindset, but each individual and team is called to find opportunities, to address needs, to create new products and solutions for those needs, to reduce the organizational bureaucracy. The second point is sharing the value and collaborating with other people in the organization and outside from the organization. It's not just 4,000 fragments, it's 4,000 micro enterprises dynamically recombining to work together. And finally, the last point is transforming cost centers and infrastructure into accelerators of business value. So having IT, legal, and all those functions also to work in the same way, also to facilitate their peers in generating value. When we go into this, with more details that are interesting, I believe, is that every micro enterprise, first of all, has a profit and loss responsibility. You can do whatever you want, but you have responsibility both for the money you generate and the cost that you have a support. And the only ask that IR is putting on micro enterprises is leading targets, is doing better than the market average. As long as you do that, you are free to decide the mechanisms, the details. And the mechanism is really bringing market needs within the core of the business and using three rights that the micro enterprise have, deciding their own strategy, deciding who they want to hire, which members should be part of the micro enterprise, and deciding how to distribute work and reward, basically. So how to pay people to what extent distribute the profit that is generated into the micro enterprise. And even individuals can decide what they want to join by bidding on work. So the micro enterprise is creating opportunities for their colleagues to bid on that work, to put forward their services, and to be paid directly by customers' outcome, by the results that they are generating for customers. As you see, the micro enterprise is really important, is really exposed to the market, is really responsible for the results of the entire organization. The second point is being ecosystemic. As I was saying, enterprise micro communities, there are a new construct, a relatively new construct. They came out in 2019 after more than 30 years of experimentation, came out to facilitate cooperation between the micro enterprises, and they're really dynamic contracts in which each entity would suggest what kind of services it can provide and what kind of returns it wants to have back. And again, the micro enterprises bid on this opportunity. So they can suggest their services for an EMC, and the EMC owner is going to pick the right micro enterprise based on their reputation. So the ability of micro enterprises and individuals to respect the commitments, to really reach the targets they have entered into, is important to be chosen again and again and again in the future. And the micro enterprises that join an EMC are both internal and external. So IR is very porous. It's very much looking into open innovation, in including startups, in collaborating with partners. It's not a closed environment. It's really an open ecosystem of collaboration. And this is so powerful in terms of speed, so powerful in terms of diversity, so powerful in terms of energy. And the last point is the enabling angle. As I said, on one side, support function become micro enterprises themselves or EMCs themselves. So HR becomes a collection of smaller teams, and these groups come together to provide services that should exceed the expectations of their customers. And finally, investments are used, we could say with complexity terms, as enabling constraints, as attractors for action, more than as rules on priorities that are dictated on people. As an entrepreneur, as an ME, a migrant, the right conditions and the right investment to the table. This is not happening only in IR. This is happening in every part of the world. This is happening at every scale. This is happening in every industry, with different terms, with different details, but this unbundling and rebundling of the firm, has been happening for many years. What we are seeing today in IR is just the most extreme, the most mature, probably the biggest example, but nonetheless one of the examples. Think about companies just Zappos, just Valve, even just Spotify or Morningstar or Burzerg or banks. All of them are taking pieces of this and are trying to infuse those pieces into their organization. So if you are thinking now this is impossible, we cannot do that, well, this is possible. It's happening today, and it's happening more and more. Just to give you a few examples, everybody right now is going entrepreneurial. Valve has teams that can decide the kind of work they want to do. Kyocera with Amoeba Management has been doing this in 1959 for a very long time. Whole Foods has the same idea of point of sales with lots of autonomy. Many of those organizations, a bit less, but still many, are going ecosystemic, are finding ways, for example, Morningstar, to create networks of commitments, colleague letters of understanding between employees for collaboration. Amazon is using APIs to do the same between teams. So at the end, we are looking for ways to rebundle teams without too much infrastructure and too much structure. but through technology and through contracts. And the last part is that Björnzorg, Morningstar, Semco, Zapcos are building tools to attract the demand and supply internally, to manage value exchanges internally, to map reputation internally. So technology is becoming a crucial enabler of all of this. It's very difficult to do that on paper. You need to have technologies, just blockchain, to make all of that happen. So going at the closure of this speech, why this is important? Well, this is important because it's generating results that are way beyond the market. Last year, IR has been growing amazingly, 61% in Germany, 52% in Italy, and today is the white good appliance leader. And there are tens of thousands of companies studying the Rendanheyi, including many Fortune 500 organizations. Why is this happening? Because from a business performance perspective, from an innovation perspective, from an employee perspective, employee engagement perspective, and sustainability perspective, self-governance, self-management, some of these concepts really generate returns that systematically exceed what we see in traditional organizations. It's good for people, but it's good also for the business. And if you want to capture this in a nutshell, with the words of Dave Snowden, one of the experts in complexity, what we are seeing today is the need for finding contextually unique solutions to rethinking organizations, solutions that emerge from the organization, are not imposed, that are adaptive to the context, and that on one side create autonomy, but on the other side maintain coherence. We could say messy coherence. And the future, we believe, is not so much about defining new organizations, but it's about redefining our way of organizing. This is what IR and what the EO, this model that we are abstracting from IR is doing. And let me close with this sentence that explains also the title. This statement from Chairman Jiang Ruimin: every empire will eventually collapse. Even if you are the biggest, strongest, the most powerful organization in the world, even if you are a leader, eventually you will lose your position. Your empire will collapse. But a rainforest, a network of interconnected, dynamic collaborations, on the other hand, can be sustained forever, probably. And IR has been a demonstration of this for quite 40 years. Let me stop here. Thank you so much. I hope this has been helped a bit to get into what IR is doing, some of the ideas, but also some of the artifacts, the solutions that have been created.
Thank you very much. And for everyone attending now, I hope this gave you some taste of the Rendanheyi and the Rendanheyi components. I want to just give some overall perspective here. If you know me, you know that I've been studying the new management models since 1993. And in fact, we saw this change in management already after the Second World War. In America, in Silicon Valley, they started to see a new emerging management model popping up. And we think it was a result mainly because of information technology. So those two things are connected in some way, the internet technology and the information technology, together with the need of new management model. The higher and the Rendanheyi in China might be hard to translate for some of you. So I want also to pinpoint that we actually have GEA, General Electric Appliances, with us today, with Antonio Boadas, because they have done this and they've done it in a more Western way. So if you have questions, I would also like you to reach out to Antonio specifically and ask how they did it, how they interpreted those different components, and how they did the implementation of them in a way that maybe make sense for you in your current organization. So with that, I would like to start with some questions. We got a number of great questions coming in. And two questions that are great are coming from Inga-Lill, and I guess Inga-Lill is from Sweden. She wanted to ask two things about the employees. So I guess you are related to HR or human focus in some way. How handle employees that didn't fit this model is the first question. So, and the second question is, the employees were measured after value creation. How is this done? What kind of metrics and how is it used? So it's about the employees. So if we take the first one, who would like to answer that? How do they handle people that didn't really fit in? And we can take it from a higher China perspective, and then we can take it from a GA perspective. What do you say about that? Okay, higher China, Emanuele, Simone, or Bill, who want to go?
I will leave Bill and Simone 1 second, 2 seconds, I'll go. Now, maybe I will be brief and leave it to Bill and Simone. I think this is an important question. And let me rephrase the question. Is it working for every employee? This is a question we get a lot. And the answer is that hire is expecting employees to behave as CEOs, as entrepreneurs. So in a sense, there is some anxiety, some expectation. Not everybody is comfortable with that. And history tells us that when Jean Groumin went into this transition, asked 10,000 people to find a role into the micro enterprises. So basically to fit into the new organization, to create value under the new paradigm. But it may be interesting, we asked the same question to Zappos. And Zappos is one of the companies in US, again, going towards market-based dynamics design. And different culture, different continent. What they said is that it's fine to ask people to be entrepreneurial. Not everybody will be as entrepreneurial as the other. So hire is one way. It's not the only way, but for sure the direction, asking people to take responsibility right now is crucial if you want to survive in the market. So this is what hire is demonstrating very well. In China, with some solutions, maybe Antonio will add other solutions that are not China specific.
Could I jump in there quickly before one of the things that I think happens here is that they've been doing this for 4 decades. So by this point, nobody comes to hire expecting to have a bureaucratic job and surprised by being asked to be entrepreneurial. And that works, so it's become almost a talent brand for hiring that has served them very, very well. I think they get more than their fair share of entrepreneurs, and that makes it's easier to do because of the consistency of what they've been doing.
Yeah, here at GA, and thank you for the opportunity. Here at GA, when we started the transformation on the Rendaheyi, so there was only one person who left the company, and that was one role that was eliminated to reduce bureaucracy and to reduce one layer. The rest of the organization is almost intact, and we have transformed our structure. Will people feel comfortable with the change? I would say yes, mostly because we all want to create value, and that's a principle. We're giving people the opportunity to create value. And a little reframe here, when we talked about it, entrepreneurs, and we use the word entrepreneurs, for some people, they just go straight to the garage in California, people wearing flip-flops. No, you don't need to be edgy and to wear a hoodie to be an entrepreneur. It's a matter of creating value and believing that you can add value and connect with your consumers and users in a different way, in a more nimble way, without having to go through bureaucracy and internal processes. And that pay by owner, pay by user principle, which is like rewarding people for the value they create, is calculated based on the business results. In our case, 100% of our organization have a variable compensation, which means have a bonus, and that is calculated based on the result of their own business unit, on their own micro enterprise. If you work on the washers and dryers micro enterprise, your bonus at the end of the year will be totally connected to sales, to margin, to EBIT and to cash generated by that business unit. That way, you are totally connected to the end results of your work at the end of the year.
Okay, so let me come in with an additional question here related to that. How do you make employees accountable for their decisions? And I would like to go back then to the original Rendanheyi, Emanuele or Simone. How do you make the employees accountable for the decision they make? This is part of the compensation model, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Well, essentially, if you look into the original model that is applied in China, that is most likely the most, I would say, advanced application of the model at the moment, or the most whole, I would say. They essentially are accountable due to the skin in the game that they have. First of all, they are accountable to reaching essentially first order is bidding for order. So they have this mechanism to essentially get job positions that is based on an active bidding from the employee to participate. So it's never passive. You never assign some work. It's always a positive and, positive attitude from the employee. Then they are accountable to the VAM contracts when they create a micro enterprise. What is a VAM contract? Essentially, it's the contract that binds the micro enterprise owners, so essentially the employee that wants to create something new, not just join some others' opportunities. It binds the employees that are creating the micro enterprise with the investors, which are essentially the field subfield owners, not these people that have to employ the capital that the organization creates by enacting the strategy in a certain industry field. So they have skin in the game. Often they invest their own money, and this generates possibility for them to exercise some optionality when and if the company gets successful. So essentially, for example, when the company is incorporated in a separate entity, and at that time, they even become owners of the organization. So as you can see, there is always this architecture of accountability that is essentially based on investing yourself. So you're never just a passive executor of work, but you're always very much involved into investing. And finally, they have very often these reputation systems. So the third layer, let's say, when multiple micro enterprises collaborate on bringing a new user scenario to the market, these micro enterprises sign a multi-party contract, where essentially they commit their resources and their capabilities in service of ecosystemic objective that is bringing a new user scenario to the market. And when they don't perform accordingly, they get bad reviews. And essentially bad reviews means that often, for example, you as a representative of certain micro enterprise, you cannot join the second iteration of that ecosystemic contract that maybe wants to bring some innovations to the market. So reputation on one hand, investing on the other hand, positive attitude on the other hand, that's how you remain accountable to creating value in that system.
And then we come to another set of questions all about ecosystems, and you touched on that, Simone, right now. One question was, what are the expectations of those partners in the ecosystem? And we also had a question about dynamic contracts, to explain the dynamic contracts a bit more, and if it's blockchain behind that.
Yeah, I can maybe continue just on this topic, and then I will leave it to my friends here. Yeah, the EMC, the ecosystem micro community, it's a construct that essentially is a dynamic contract. That it's a dynamic way to do organization. So it's much more versatile and much more transient than how we normally deal with organizing. So we are used to having organizations based on functions, divisions, structures. Instead, the EMC is a dynamic way to reorient the capabilities in the organization to help them bundle nearer to the customer. So essentially, we have an organization here that is unbundled into pieces and dynamically rebundles the capabilities that they have to generate value for the user. So that's a very big lesson, I think, for our Western organizations, or in general organizations that don't adopt these dynamic ways of organizing. And the EMC, the ecosystemic community contract, is I think probably the most innovative idea that came out from, that's my opinion, of course, from higher. So it's really something that we didn't see yet. You know, in other contexts, we saw micro enterprises, we saw platforms, but we never saw really this idea of dynamic contracting. And it's also interesting because it was a practice that emerged from the company, and it wasn't designed, it was emergent. And finally, yes, they use smart contracting. Why? Because there are so many ecosystem contracts coming up that doing it manually, it was really impossible, basically. So they built this so-called EMC workbench, that is a technology that is used to create ecosystemic contracts, to create this complex set of orders that other people in the organization can bid to participate for. And normally the HR helps close down these contracts, and the financial as well. The financial departments help to, for example, validate that the leading targets that these contracts define are really leading. So one last point, I think, to reflect on this is, let's reflect on the role of technology in our organizations. So technology now, I think it's really important to really make some organizational choices possible, and the EMC is a good example of that.
Would you say that this model is even possible without those new emerging technologies? Because, I mean, this ecosystem is not only blockchain, right? It's platform technologies, cloud technologies, AI technologies, in order to actually see and be able to pay the right amount and to see what's going on and who is contributing and who's not. It's a pretty advanced model, as you said before. It's a very sophisticated business model based on, in my view, emerging technologies. What is your view from Italy, from my sister center?
Yeah, I mean, mine, and then I will lead to the others, but my view is the answer is no. Technology and organizing cannot be untangled anymore. They're the same thing. And so it doesn't make even sense to ask this question, I think.
Okay.
Well, let me build on that. We are working with many organizations that are very far from higher, because 95% of the market is far from higher. Still, those organizations, and talking about multinational companies and regulated industries, many countries, you know, hundreds of years of history, they have a legacy, they have rules to respect. So the answer could be, no, don't look at those guys, they're too ahead. Or let's find ways to plug some of this, not to copy these, but take inspiration from these in other organizations. And there is one question, I think, about how you can do that. I believe, yeah, you can go so far, even without having all, you know, the enablers, technology included in place. Eventually you need it, but you can get started by unbundling your support functions, HR, IT, legal, finding internal entrepreneurs through pilots in line with complexity. So building basically the minimum viable structure, the principles for people to become entrepreneur, to be safe in doing that, to experiment and to let the organization learn from it. Not starting from the target operating model, as we have been doing consulting for too many years, but letting this emerge and then fixing and then learning and then adding structure and technology when you have demonstrated the value. We are seeing this happening again in sectors that are very far without people like Chairman Jan Remain. This is happening right now. So my invitation is start thinking about the impact on your own industry, your own company, and create a space for experimenting.
And I think I think Bill maybe want to say something about that as well, because I know you have been talking a lot with Chairman Zhang, and isn't it that he actually focused more on the human perspective and the organizational perspective before technology? You don't really start by, oh my God, we don't have the technology, we cannot do anything, right?
Yes, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of technology involved here, but it's not a technology driven, it's not digital transformation, for example. it's very much, and it's also not about centralization. I think that's the real message I'd want to get across. It's not to bring data into the center and then make strategic decisions about it. If anything, what's happening is that the strategic decisions are being made distributed throughout the organization by small units rather than by central units. So I think that we're one of the things, one of the hopes that I have is that the data, the information systems that we're seeing is really more about scalable learning rather than, and as Antonio knows, not about sharing best practices, but about really learning the experience of each other to be able to be better informed.
Right. I would like to go to the next area, and that is actually transformation. And my personal experience in this area is that, you know, I've been studying the companies that were born. They were born with internet, right? They were popping up from the 1998 and so forth. And I know Niklas is on this webinar as well. Thank you, Niklas. And we just identify that something happened there in 1998, and you know, after that, it was a new generation companies. Okay, but if you're not one of them, how do you do it? And that is a frustration in many fields, right? You are in the automotive sector, or in the home appliance sector, or in the steel sector, and you don't know where to start. So the next question is, what is the first step? And I would like to give that to Antonio. How can you even start this?
I would say that we need to start by understanding what Rendanheyi is. Rendanheyi is neither a recipe nor a destination. Rendanheyi is a journey, and it's a philosophy. When you take it that way, everything that we have heard today is inspiration. It's part of the experimentation. It's a learning process. The second is focus on your owner and your user. Forget about your boss as the guy who sits on the corner office. That person is no longer your boss. The real boss is the one who you sell your stuff to. And if you have a coffee shop, if you don't sell coffee today, you won't make any money. That's that simple. You're serving that person. You need to please that person. For you to be able to do that, you might need to change the structure and how you're organized, because we were organized around a bureaucratic system in which you were serving your internal client. Just focus on that external person. That's the reason why we have micro enterprises, because we just basically split the company into small pieces to be closer and more nimble to the owner and the user. And then the last piece is treat people as people. And this is the human element that Bill was referring to. It's not about the system. It's not about how we curate the contract. It is about making sure that we enable people to be people, to add value. And I like to say that when we hire people in any company, we hire them because they're very talented. And we treat them like almost all respect of the world, because they are coming to us, and then, wow, what a talented person. As soon as we hire them, we turn them into parts of a system. So those who you hire are so smart, and they're still smart after you hire them. Treat them as professionals, as talented people, and they will be adding value. That's the reason why we're here, because we want to create something great. So these are the three elements. Just realizing that will enable many things. And then just read about what we are doing and what the different organizations are doing. But I will say that it's a matter of mindset first.
And it's pretty impressive. I'm writing a white paper together with Bill right now on General Electric, and it sounds so easy. I mean, like looking at what you did, it sounds pretty easy, but it was a huge, bold journey you did. But I mean, the first thing you did was to put up a new bold goal. Okay, so they have, for you that didn't know GEA, they have been focusing on efficiency, as many of you do. And they changed that and said, we're now not going to defend anymore. We're becoming the world leader. We need growth, and we need to grow much, much higher than any of our competitors. And that meant that everyone suddenly had to live up to do that. And then that needed a change, because that was impossible with the culture you had, with the structure you had, right? So sometimes if you look at it in retrospective, it's like, Yeah, it makes sense. Step 1, step 2, step 3 to do it, right? So anyway, do we have any more questions? We had one question about talent acquisition and hiring. So to both of you, have you seen, Antonio, you're working with GA, Emanuele, you're working with a lot of companies transforming. Do you see that they also change their way of looking at who they employ?
Antonio, do you want to go first?
No, Emanuele, please.
Okay. So I would like to make a distinction here. Hire as a concept called talent pool. So there is a place, a mechanism from which people then can decide, as Simone was saying, are not pushed into a role, but can decide what kind of roles they want to join. Most traditional organizations don't have a talent pool. People are just into a box. And the first reason for doing this is to free people from boxes, giving them the space, to the passion, the ingenuity to find their boxes, possible circles, because they resonate with them, they motivate them, but often they are stuck. So what we are seeing, what we are now experimenting is transition strategies, connectors into traditional hierarchy, to enable some of the things that hire has been experimenting, but without disrupting the legacy day one. So you may have virtual MEs, you may have to translate some mechanisms in other mechanisms that you have procedures, but this is possible. And it's possible also for people. The first request is that people want to have this opportunity, want to have the opportunity to have space, to invent, to experiment, to get the upsides, the results, the payoff of their risk-taking. And they're willing to take risk. They're willing to give up, status, to give up, variable pay, even base salary, in order to be happy of waking up and making a dent in the universe thanks to their organization. This is massively missing in the market. Hundreds of millions of people that don't want to go to work Monday morning. We need to get rid of that.
Right. Great comment. And Antonio, I know that your people said that they actually start looking at new kind of people that they never would have thought about before.
Yeah, and we're still hiring for jobs and for boxes. So I don't want to stay here that we're perfect. We're far from perfect. We're learning and we're evolving. We're trying to fill the gaps on the different capabilities and new capabilities that we lack of. And we're looking for what we were talking before, that willingness to learn, to innovate, to try, and the ability to learn new things, and the flexibility of what I call being and becoming problem lovers, which is like just getting into the problem, falling in love with it until you find a solution. That is the kind of talent we're looking for. We're actually looking for specific capabilities from time to time. And 4 years ago, we were focusing on reinventing marketing for this category, which was highly underdeveloped. So we brought people from highly developed marketing organizations to join us. And we're doing the same on product supply and robotics. So that's what we're doing. So we're looking for capabilities now, but also basic balance in this with that profile of people that is really open and willing to innovate, to try, to test, and not just to follow orders that they might never receive here.
And with that, I would like to say that we have come to an ending where you understand that we cannot go through the Rendanheyi model in a 1 hour session. This is one of the most sophisticated, and I totally agree with my sister centers colleagues in the world, management model in the world. It's hard to understand sometimes because we have to relearn. People in the West have to relearn, and that is the hard thing. We don't see example on Western companies that have been adopting this and have adapted it to their culture, to their way of working. And it's definitely not, it doesn't have to be a long process. GEA, for example, have done a great job in only 4 years. So if you want to learn more, I would like to first publish the link again to a course. If you want to attend the Rendanheyi Masterclass in October, you have it in the chat right now, and you will spend, is it 15 hours?
16.
16 hours, and you will learn everything about the Rendanheyi, and you will meet Emanuele and Simone again. Then I also want to do a poll, because we are thinking of also providing a masterclass on the Rendanheyi at the continent of America, the time zone of the USA. So Ayana, do we have you here so we can do a poll? Let's start. See, yeah, there it comes. Okay, so if you just please can answer the poll so we can get the result. So would you be interested to take a certificate course for professionals? And would you be interested then in the American time zone, Asian time zone, Oceania? And if you're not from there, I understand it might be 0. So we should be primarily Europeans and people from North America, South America here today. No, actually not. We are from Asia as well. I saw that. Sorry for my mistake. We have a lot of people from Asia among the attendances as well.
And maybe while you vote, let me say that this is not just an opportunity for listening to us. It's interesting that maybe not enough. It's a way to bring your own context, organizational context, and to apply the tools, so canvases, open source tools, to experiment, to play with this in your own context. This is what we really value. We want to help organizations to take this and to change it and to tailor to them, not to copy. So here is a great invitation for experimentation. I would like to have you there and play with us.
Yeah, and isn't it that if they go through us, they can also get a discount on your course in October, right? I can provide you with a discount, I think. Emanuele, my colleague, can send me a discount, and you can get hold of that discount if you just contact us. So, so make sure that we know if you want to take the October course before you sign up, you can get a discount code from me just because you attend this webinar today. And I think we have 40% have voted. Come on, I need more people voting. I need more input. 42%, I want some more, otherwise you cannot leave this webinar. Okay, 3 more percent, I want 50% of you. Yes, we did it. Okay, thank you. Okay, end poll, share the result. Okay, so here is what you said. You do want a masterclass in Rendanheyi. 82% or 18 people of you that voted said that, and you seem to be very interested to have one in the time zone of the American continent. So thank you for that. Thank you for taking part of the webinar, and I hope that you will attend other webinars from our center. We have one coming up on June 22nd. Don't miss that one. It will be how you can disrupt and still harvest your core business. It's really about how to deal with the transformation going on now, specifically if you are a matured, established company. So don't miss that one, June 22nd. And thank you for coming. Thank you, Antonio. Thank you, Emanuele. Thank you, Simone. Thank you, Bill. And thank you, Ayana. Take care.
Okay, bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.